Hello everyone, Matt here from Telling Tales, and this is a tour of my tabletop role-playing game library. It's first going out to patrons over at patreon.com/tellingtales, and then it'll be just going live on the YouTubes. But I imagine you're familiar with us anyway, otherwise why the hell would you be watching some random beardo talk about his tabletop role-playing games collection? But for what it's worth, here it is. I have been buying tabletop role-playing games since 1991 or thereabouts, so 30 years now, essentially. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff in here with some fairly significant gaps. Like when we go through it, one thing you might notice is there's sort of a gap in time of about probably 10-ish years, where there's stuff basically missing from the mid-2000s through to maybe around the mid-2010s, because I just wasn't doing that much role-playing, or at least wasn't buying a lot of systems. Another thing you may notice, and this will be no news to you if you've come to us through watching Telling Tales and you've heard me talk for longer than 10 minutes about role-playing games, but one thing you may notice is a intimidating, frightening lack of Dungeons and Dragons, of which I have nothing, nada, nothing. I have owned some Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm not sure where it is. It's possibly back in my childhood home, but I did once own, I think, the original Ravenloft box set, but because someone bought it me, probably one of my parents bought it for me from a car boot sale, which is a term that probably has confused everyone not from the UK. But yeah, I've never played it, so that's not here in this collection. Having said that, eagle-eyed viewers who know what their spines look like will have observed that there are two big shelves here, and the vast majority of the top larger shelf is all World of Darkness White Wolf stuff. So we're going to be talking a bit about that, so hopefully that's interesting to you, and then we're going to go through the other stuff as well. Yeah, I have no real idea how I'm going to do this other than just walk through sort of bit by bit, system by system sort of thing. The first thing on this top shelf is not even a tabletop role-playing game, but a collector's edition of Watchman, the graphic novel. It's not a graphic novel, it's a comic book. Yeah, but then the starting bit we have here, so yeah, pretty much all of this, I think all this up to like here is either White Wolf. I guess the modern stuff is sort of White Wolf as well. White Wolf, but not all World of Darkness. So we actually start here with what I believe now is called the Trinity Continuum, but these are the original editions. So it's the storyteller system, the same as World of Darkness, but a different sort of world and setting, which had 3 releases. There's this, which is Adventure, which is like a pulpy, noiry, adventure-y thing, sort of like, you know, Indiana Jones and stuff like that. And then there's another one that's set in the latter half of the 20th century called Aberrant, which is one of my favourite games of all time, and one I barely actually got to the table over the years. But this is my favourite ever superhero game. And it's kind of like it was doing kind of like dark, gritty superhero stuff before that really entered the public consciousness outside of comic book fans. And you can create very, very specific superpowers and combine them in really interesting ways. And yeah, it's really good. We should play this on the channel at some point. But yeah, Aberrant is the same world as Adventure. And then the final one in this kind of like trilogy of little settings that White Wolf did for this is, I mean, as it is called now, the Trinity Continuum. It's called Trinity. And it's like a sci-fi thing that came in a binder. How weird is that? John behind the camera, I can see John furrowing his brow in confusion as to why White Wolf would do such a thing. I don't know. Make it look different, I guess. White Wolf, towards the tail end of their success, did some weird things. Because money and probably drugs are a hell of a drug. yeah, so that's my Trinity Continuum stuff. I believe Onyx Path are doing Trinity Continuum now and have done recently re-released editions through Kickstarter and stuff. I don't know if they're any good. I assume they are because Onyx Path are good. But these are the originals, not with too many source booky things. I'd like to have like a complete collection of the original Aberrant stuff at some point, but there's quite a lot more than I've got. I've just got a player's guide and something called Year One, which is yeah, I think they released multiple things like Year 1, Year 2, Year 3 as like the meta plot went forward, and I think that's just a thing of that. Going from something I really like and haven't played enough of to something I really like and haven't played enough of, even though I've played a lot of it, we will take a look at the first edition of Exalted, which is another non-World of Darkness thing that White Wolf did, although it was originally designed as a prehistory of the World of Darkness. And I don't know if you can see, but the binding is fucked because I've used this book so much. I think it wasn't my longest ever campaign now, but one of my longest campaigns I've ever run was an Exalted campaign in my mid-20s. Exalted is, again, it's the storyteller system, so it uses the same kind of like dot and big D10 dice pool thing as World of Darkness. This binding is really terribly horrible. It probably doesn't help that I keep them all upright on there. And Exalted is like a real mishmash fantasy world of like sort of weird, odd magic, almost like magic realism Western fantasy with like more kind of like Eastern kind of Japanese and Chinese fantasy influences, which isn't something I tend to look for in my thing. Like I'm not like an anime guy or a manga guy or anything like that. But for some reason in Exalted, all of this comes together really perfectly to provide. You can tell while I'm doing this, I'm actually really worried about the binding on this. To provide like a really interesting and unique setting, which I really, 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 really love. Exalted was released as this core book where you play these beings called the Solar Exalted, who are basically individuals who have like a fragment of a god in them, a god called the Unconquered Sun, and they're really, really super powerful. Like it's a very empowering system for the players because they tend to be able to take on like small armies by themselves after they've leveled up a bit. But there are other, what I guess would call splat books. I don't know if splat books... Is splat books a term that role players know of nowadays, John?
No idea.
I mean, that's probably a no if you don't.
I've only ever heard you use it.
Okay, yeah. So splat books is a term that tended to be used by White Wolf fans back in the late 90s and early 2000s. And it's basically like a kind of source book that allows you to play other things, if that makes sense. So like there are a load of splat books for Exalted that let you play different kinds of Exalted. Dragon-blooded, Lunars, Abyssals, Sidereal, Fairfolk, Auto-Chthonians, who are like kind of steampunky, add like a kind of steampunky element to the fantasy world there. And then I've got a whole bunch of source books, and this is all first edition Exalted. There was a second edition as well, which I didn't like as much. And again, I believe Onyx Path have released a newer, I guess it's third edition, I don't know, relatively recently via Kickstarter. Whenever I say recently, bear in mind I mean like during my 30s or something, which may be a long time ago for you guys. But yeah, I've got a whole bunch of source books here for it. One of my ambitions for my collection is to have a complete set of first edition Exalted stuff, which is probably more plausible now than ever, since I think it's among the stuff you can get printed on demand by DriveThruRPG. Even if it's not, like I can probably find them on eBay or whatever. There's not too many I don't have. I think it's maybe double again this much, so it's not beyond the realms of possibility. Speaking of beyond the realms of possibility, another ambition of mine is to have a complete set of original Old World of Darkness stuff. That's a lot of stuff, and a lot of that would have to be print on demand, and some of it isn't even available as print on demand, and I'll have to somehow hunt it down. But as you can see, I'm a bit of a fan of the Old World of Darkness. Moving along here, so this entire section here is all vampire. There's the Vampire Masquerade section in the middle, Vampire the Dark Ages here, which is probably my favourite of the original World of Darkness core books. I'm a big history nerd, and I like Vampire, and the presentation of this first edition Vampire Dark Ages is absolutely spectacular. It's one of the prettiest role-playing books of all time, in my grim, gritty Gen X 90s opinion. Obviously, opinion may vary. If you like your stuff a bit more colourful, then you may not like it, but it has lovely, lovely illustrations like this in it, and it's generally wonderful. Vampire the Dark Ages, for people who are more familiar with Masquerade, I mean, it's essentially the same game, but obviously set in the past. I think the default year in that first edition is 1190, something like that. But it feels very different because, like, there's no Camarilla, there's no Sabbat. It's all just like individual princes ruling the night like tyrants. There's a lot more variety, like common variety in clans. There's a lot more bloodlines that have now died out and stuff. And I just like historical stuff. And yeah, I have barely ever run any Vampire the Dark Ages. That is something I definitely want to do on the channel at some point because I love it. And I've got a bunch of the expansions for that. I've got the Veil of Night expansion, which is essentially like the Middle East, like a setting book for that, and like the clan variants of the Middle East. There's a companion here. There's Wolves from the Sea, which is the Viking source book, and Wind from the East, which is the kind of Mongolian source book. There's also, I won't go through all of these individually. I'm talking about a lot of these because I really like the Dark Ages books. There's also this, which is my favourite setting book of all time, which is Constantinople by Night. Anyone who, again, talks to me for any length of time will hear me going on and on about Constantinople and Byzantium and the Byzantine Empire. I was literally having a conversation with John last night about the Byzantine Empire. And this is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful source book that has, again, like wonderful art and really characterful descriptions and stuff in it, and is, a really good evocative setting for Vampire. And I really hope I get to run something in Constantinople at some point. There's Transylvania by now. Transylvania, that's done to death, you know. Couple of clan books. We have Victorian Age Vampire, which wasn't a system on its own, but is like provides you with the information to run it in the setting, right? How the clans are different, how the global vampiric politics are different, stuff like that. That's fine. That's fine. Like, if I'm going to run something in the Victorian Age, I'd probably weigh more towards stuff like Call of Cthulhu, but it's fine. Then we have, and we will deal with this stuff on top in a bit, then we have Vampire the Masquerade. My copy is 2nd edition, which is the classic edition, folks, of course, for me. This is one of the oldest role-playing books I own. It's probably the book I own that's had the most wear and tear on it in terms of me needing to use it, because I ran Vampire relatively regularly when I was a teenager. Back when I got it, I would have got this in 93 or 94, something like that. Let's see what the copyright 92. I reckon I would have got it in 93 or so. And it's still holding up pretty well. Binding is coming apart slightly. But yeah, still smells good. And I also ran a very long-running Vampire the Masquerade campaign up until quite recently. Offline. So, Vampire the Masquerade. There is a whole bunch of other stuff here for Vampire the Masquerade. Most of it, 2nd edition, though some crossover into Revised, or 2.5, whatever you want to call it. But most of it is 2nd edition because I started to slightly tune out of Vampire the Masquerade and World of Darkness in general when the Revised editions kicked in, partially because my nerd interests were diversifying as I was getting into my late teens, and also partly because all the metaplot stuff they did really turned me off. I'm not entirely against metaplot because some of it can be really exciting, But I think there's a difference between metaplot that feels like the world is evolving and metaplot that feels like the designers and writers of the game are basing the entire game around their personal characters and personal campaign. And I felt like the metaplot of White Wolf's later World of Darkness Revised Edition kind of felt like that a little bit. Maybe that's unfair. I know a lot of people loved it, but that's how it felt to me at the time. So I kind of tuned out a little bit. But yeah, we've got a bunch of stuff here. We've got Chicago Chronicles, Chicago by Night 2nd edition, an original version of that, an original 2nd edition, you know what I mean, which is probably the second thing I owned for Vampire. We have the oft mentioned among White Wolf circles Montreal by Night, which is part of their Black Dog imprint. For anyone who doesn't know, Black Dog was... okay, so White Wolf were notorious, and still are, in the 90s for producing, I guess, edgy books, like more mature stuff. You know, The World of Darkness was a step up in terms of the grimness of what a published role-playing game would tend to be. And Black Dog was their adult print. So Black Dog is like a step beyond that. It's where they produce things like Montreal by Night, which has some very infamous art and character write-ups in it, all the way to kind of less edgy, more firmly trying to be very adult stuff. Like there was a Wraith the Oblivion sourcebook for the Holocaust, which, yeah, maybe a difficult subject to touch. I honestly, I don't own that, and I don't know how well they did that really, but yeah, that's what Black Dog was. I've got Montreal by Night there. There's a bunch of clan books here. I'm not going to talk about them individually, but I have, and actually, I think you've got one of these, John, because you've got my first edition Ventry, right? Yeah. But I've got all the first edition of the Camarilla clans. Am I actually missing any clan books now? Any first edition clan books? I don't think I am. I think I've got them all. There's Kindred of the Ebony Kingdom, which, like Victorian Age Vampire, isn't a game unto itself, but is a source book that talks about, it's set in Vampire Masquerade in like the modern era, and it's like vampires in Africa, and how they differ. And it's actually really interesting. Again, I'm not sure how, sort of appropriative and representative it is, but for what it's worth, it's interesting, and a whole new spin on the vampire world. We've got the sourcebook Gehenna, which was part of the Time of Judgment series they produced at the end of the original World of Darkness, that basically wraps up the settings. And Gehenna gives you, I think, 4 different stories of how the world could end. And it was interesting, and for real lore nerds, it provided some lovely underlining and stuff. And then they moved on to what was then the new World of Darkness, and is now called the Chronicles of Darkness, like Vampire Requiem and stuff like that, which I don't own any of. Although I would like to own a couple of the more interesting ones. Moving on, we have the next of the White Wolf World of Darkness games, which is Werewolf the Apocalypse, which as we film this, we are currently playing on the channel. This is Werewolf the Apocalypse First Edition, with a torn cover. This is the second roleplay book, or second roleplay system I ever acquired. I acquired this before Vampire the Masquerade. Yeah, and I think you can tell from how generally battered it is, although the interior is still functioning. And of course, as a softback, the binding is still holding up much better than a lot of other things. But yeah, Werewolf the Apocalypse First Edition is a bit of a mess. Definitely in terms of the layout, they hadn't really nailed the kind of layout system that they had in Vampire Masquerade Second Edition quite yet. Because I think Werewolf First Edition came out before Vampire Second Edition. I could be wrong in that. Let's have a look, shall we? Let's have a look. Yes, it did. This is 1991. And I'd have got it maybe 92, 93ish, something like that. Yeah, but it's cool. Look, the front has claws. And then you open it. Ooh, a forest. A spooky forest. It's good. But yeah, Werewolf the Apocalypse First Edition, which I got before Vampire. A friend of mine already had Vampire, and also I loved werewolves, so I got Werewolf instead. I also have Werewolf the Apocalypse. Is that 2nd edition or revised? I think it's revised edition. There as well, which is the one I usually use for reference because, like I say, Werewolf 1st edition, some of the rules are quite different, and also it's just clunky to read through. So when I'm running Werewolf, I usually use this. At the moment on the channel, we're using the 20th anniversary editions from On Its Path, which are very, very good, but I don't own any of. I'd quite like to order the physical versions of them, because I have the PDFs, but the physical versions of them, like the binding on the latest editions, is questionable, even with modern binding techniques for print on demand, because they're huge. They're like 600 to 900 page tomes, so we'll see. I've got a bunch of werewolf stuff after that: Player's Guide, Storyteller's Handbook, Book of the Worm, blah blah blah, like fairly typical things. I've got Under a Blood Red Moon, which is one of my favourites, which is like a crossover vampire and werewolf story about the War of Chicago, where werewolves invade the vampire stronghold of Chicago. Ran that sort of relatively recently, within the last 5 years or so, and had good fun doing that. Next, here we've got, and I know someone has already spotted these in the background and gone, "Are those tribe books?" because of colours, and then this just big white patch here. Yeah, these are my tribe books. I have all the tribe books for Werewolf the Apocalypse, and I have nearly all the breed books as well. I think I'm missing Ratkin and Bastet are the only ones I'm missing, which are like Were-Rats and Were-Cats. Yeah. Then there's Apocalypse, which is the werewolf version of Gehenna, the kind of wrap-up thing. We've got Dark Ages Mage, which is this a book unto itself? I don't think it is. I think you need a copy of Mage the Ascension to play it. It is the only role-playing book I own with cat damage. Appalling monster. Yeah, I've never played Dark Ages Mage. I don't have much to say about it. Ooh, it creaks nicely when you open it, though. Ooh, binding's gone on that as well. This is the problem, folks, with a lot of like these 90s. Well, it's not 90s, it'll happen to everything. But kind of this, when you have a binding by glue, the glue comes apart eventually. It just dries, decays, and desiccates, and it leaves you with a slightly wonky book. It's a shame because they feel so sturdy. But time makes fools of us all, even if we are books. So yeah, Dark Ages Mage, Mage the Ascension, which will be running on the channel very soon. This is the 2nd edition. It's a lovely book, as all editions of Mage have been. It looks great inside still, I think. Kind of weird and abstract and odd. Yeah, it's really good. More about Mage soon when we run it. But I'm very much looking forward to it. I've never run more than a couple editions of Mage, binding on this also. And again, what I was going to say, sorry, about those bindings is one of the problems with them is it gets way worse if you leave them upright like this. But realistically, storing them any other way is super difficult. So you just got to go, okay, the bindings are going to go. Anyway, Mage the Ascension is a game I've not played very much of, and it's notorious as a game that is a lot of people's favourite game that they've never played, because it's quite difficult to kind of grok and wrap your head around some of it. But yeah, we're going to have some fun doing that. I've got some Mage books, not too many, including some tradition books. So just, yeah, Book of Shadows, Book of the Worlds, stuff like that. We've got Ascension, which is, again, the Time of Judgment book for Mage. Here we've got Wraith the Great War, which is probably one of the more depressing things I own. And when I say that, and it's next to Wraith the Oblivion, you know it must be pretty bad. So yeah, Wraith the Great War is basically the version of Wraith that's set in World War I. Yeah, it's super, super depressing, as you'd imagine. Wraith the Oblivion, I don't have any extra source books or anything for this. Obviously, Wraith is also coming up on the channel with Cincinnati Chronicles. And again, this is 2nd edition, and this is a lovely, lovely book with lovely, lovely art. characterful. And again, binding going. Yeah, I don't have any source books for Wraith. Wraith was not around as long as most of the other World of Darkness systems. It was, I guess I'm loath to say abandoned, but I think it just didn't sell as well as the first three, so it didn't have as much stuff produced for it. Also, I mean, Mage also has a reputation of being damn near unplayable, while also being an amazing high concept thing. So we'll see how we do when we roll that one out. The last of the big 5 core books of the original World of Darkness is Changeling, which is quite a bit more colourful than the others, as you can see here. This is the first edition of Changeling. I got this the week it came out in the UK. And as you can see, colourful inside as well. Lovely stuff. Again, we'll be getting to Changeling. Changeling is always referred to as like the World of Darkness one that isn't depressing. I disagree. I think if you run it in a certain way, it can actually be the bleakest of all the 5, because the others are like, oh, becoming an immortal monster, raging against your own primal anger, being someone who controls reality. Whereas Changeling is about growing up and forgetting how to be an innocent child, which is something that actually does happen to all of us. So I think it can definitely resonate a bit closer, but hey, what do I know? Next, well, we have a bunch of Changeling books here. The Changeling spines, I don't know if you can close in on those, John, but the Changeling spines were intended to look, to like, if you had them all in order on your shelf, they'd build like a stained glass picture, and it look really nice. Look at all this. Obviously, it's wonky here because I don't have some in the middle and stuff like that. It didn't happen in the end because they didn't release enough Changeling books to finish the image. But there we go. We've got some other extraneous World of Darkness systems here. We've got the 2nd edition of Mummy, or technically the 1st edition of Mummy the Resurrection, I think. But yeah, when they kind of rebooted Mummy to bring it more in line with the other settings, because the original Mummy, where is it? Where are you? Oh, it's right here before the other one. The original Mummy was just a little supplement for Vampire the Masquerade. I actually prefer this one because I think the mummies in it are more interesting, but there we go. We've got Kindred of the East. Hasn't aged well, probably, which is, yeah, sort of Eastern, Chinese, Japanese, Korean vampires, unrelated to the vampires from Vampire the Masquerade. Yeah, a lot of people really super liked it. Was never hugely into it, the Quajin and their kind of world. Yeah, and like I say, I don't know how well it's aged. Yeah, Huns of the Reckoning, which is a game that a lot of people really liked for how different it was compared to the other World of Darkness stuff, because you're playing not a normal person, because you do have kind of powers, but essentially a human fighting the supernatural in order to keep other humans safe, which was obviously kind of the opposite of what most World of Darkness stuff was. I believe Hunter is getting a new edition from the new White Wolf, so we'll see what that looks like. Demon the Fallen, which I essentially have for the sake of completion. A lot of people really like Demon. When they released Demon, I remember seeing it and thinking, wow, that looks super cheap compared to their other stuff, because they were starting to run out of money. And the interior I wasn't struck with either. And I remember just thinking, really? They were like the last thing in World of Darkness that still had an element of like mystery to them, and like the big bad evil that even vampires shouldn't mess with. And then it's like, you just made them another kind of character. I don't know. Wasn't a fan. I know a lot of people do like them because of their kind of like anti-hero-ness that they've got, but not for me. World of Darkness Time of Judgment, which is the Time of Judgment book for everything after Mage, all wrapped up in this, apart from Wraith, because they literally already killed them all off in the meta plot. But there we go. We have just these last couple of things of interest. There's some just general World of Darkness source books here. There's World of Darkness 2nd edition, which is an invaluable book for anyone who wants like a wider understanding of World of Darkness, particularly Vampire. from 2nd edition. It's really, really, really good and gives you a lot of like knowledge of the world and the geography and politics. We got World of Darkness Midnight Circus, which is the most 90s thing. It's an evil circus with spooky freaks and stuff. It's just very, someone was just reading a lot of Clive Barker and Neil Gaiman and, watching a lot of, Twin Peaks and an episode of The X-Files called Humbug and stuff, and just wanted to make a spooky circus. It's actually a pretty good book. It's a pretty good book. I don't have any idea how you'd feature it beyond like a single adventure, but whatever.
I once again marvel at the fact that you can just name relevant X-File episodes off the top of your head.
I was obsessed with The X-Files when I was about 14, 15. And Humbug is a very notorious episode. So a lot of people like Humbug. Yeah. Then we come to the modern World of Darkness stuff. I'm sorry if you don't like World of Darkness, by the way. This entire video up to this point will have definitely been boring for you, but oh well. Modern World of Darkness. I won't get this all out. Will I? Maybe I will. Oh my god. Yeah. Which comes in like a slipcase, or I have the slipcase edition to be more accurate, of Vampire Masquerade and the Camarilla Annex. So this is V5, the new edition. It's chunky and expensive and quite pretty as well. A lot of people don't like the interior art, but I thought it was pretty solid. Vampire Masquerade 5th edition is something I have mixed feelings about. I had better feelings about it when it first came out, because there's people who watched any of our original Vampire V5 series, London Ascendant, which wasn't very popular, will know. A lot of the rules changes I really like, and the group who played that really liked them as well. A lot of the changes to do with hunger. It feels more like you're an actual vampire. It's not a controversial opinion to say that as the source books have followed and the ownership of them has changed hands multiple times, it feels like it's lost a lot of focus, and it feels like some of the choices were made kind of arbitrarily rather than actually having a reasoning behind them. Having said that, there is a bunch of good stuff. I still think the core book's pretty good. The releases from Onyx Path, Cults of the Blood Gods and Chicago by Night are both good. Fall of London, which we ran part of, is not great, but there are things to like about it. So Vampire the Masquerade, a bit of a mixed bag on that. I think I have everything for that now. There's also a Vampire Companion where they release the Shmise and Salubrian stuff and Ravnos. But I don't think there's a physical edition of that. I think that's just a PDF. And there's also a new Sabbat book out by Renegade. So again, changed hands again, which I don't own yet, but I probably will get. And finally, we come to the end of World of Darkness, folks. So the last couple of things on the end of this row are In Nomine from Steve Jackson Games, the makers of Illuminati and a bunch of other stuff, GURPS. In Nomine is originally a French game, I believe, and then it had this English language edition printed by, oh my god, it's so dusty, printed by Steve Jackson Games. I put it at the end of the World of Darkness thing because it's pretty World of Darknessy. You play angels or demons, and the mechanics are pretty simple but interesting, and you have like when you're an angel or a demon, you have a word that is like your your
domain. Yeah,
your domain that you have to watch over. But like World of Darkness, it has like the different, you're a cherub or a Ophanim or a Malachim or whatever. But one of the things about it, other than the fact that it's obviously not particularly World of Darkness in its design. Look how colourful it is and like sort of striking, almost like cartoony art. One of the good things about In Nomine is the way it's written. You can play it in very different styles. Like it does talk about in the book how you'd play it in a more kind of World of Darkness style, grim and gritty. But it also references things like Good Omens and just general kind of like odd weirdness. I've never run In Nomine. but I would like to one day. And then on here, and we'll do a bit of shuffling because it's odd to get out. This is Suzeran, Mortal Realms by Treehouse. I don't know that much about this game, despite having owned it for probably about 20 years. I don't know much about the people who made it. I basically got it on a whim because I liked the look of it. I liked the design of it. It's very early 2000s design. It's got a very World of Darkness kind of feel to it, in all honesty, which is why it's on the same shelf, in that you play sort of followers of different pantheons of gods who've all come back, and all the pantheons of gods have come back to the world in a kind of like, almost like an apocalyptic sort of way. Yeah, that's it. Honestly, I don't know much more about it beyond that. I've never run it. It has a big LARPy component in it. Not a mandatory one, but like there's a big section on how to LARP with it. So I don't know if the writers were primarily sort of LARP players or anything like that. And I don't know much more about it beyond what I've just said. So forgive me, because that wasn't a very knowledgeable statement about it. But yeah, if anyone out there has experience with Susan, let us know. Okay, second shelf. I hope people are having fun with this. Actually, no, before we do that, let's cover this. So the stuff on top that I haven't put away is just new stuff that's coming recently from Kickstarters. And I'm keeping it out because I want to film some videos where I'm going through it. Johnny did that quite recently with the Beowulf Age of Heroes thing. So I want to do a similar thing with these, which will turn up on Patreon as well. And that's basically the reason why they're out. So we have here Everway, which was a recent reworking, new edition via Kickstarter. I have the original Everway here. Everway is a super interesting fantasy role-playing game that was also very, very, very influential. Not in terms of having lots of people play it, but in terms of how many role-playing designers were inspired by Everway. Everway is diceless. It uses something akin to a kind of tarot deck in order to resolve things. You don't have dice. You've barely got stats. There's 4 stats in the entire game. And it's meant to be very freewheeling. The world is one where there are all these different, or the setting is one where there are all these different worlds you travel between. I think, God, they actually called plane walkers in it, like in Magic. I can't remember. But that's generally the idea, is you are a hero who goes between different worlds and realities in order to do good things from a central world called Everway. And it was noted as having very sort of new age type art and stuff, and being very colourful, which, as you can see, has carried on into these new editions. And so there's like a player book for that. There's a games master's book, which I'll show because it's got a cool griffin on it. And there's also a deluxe fortune deck I got from the Kickstarter as well, which I won't open up and show you, but that is it. Everway. I'm probably going to run that as a one-shot this year. This year being 2022. So there's that. And then down here, finally, we have the original edition of Everway, which came in a box. We have Forbidden Lands. Actually, before we get into Forbidden Lands, because that's a whole Free League thing, let's talk about the stuff hidden behind here. It's not hidden for any reason, it's just for reason of room. First off, and John really wanted me to talk about Ninja Burger. This is Ninja Burger. I bought it in the early 2000s from a local role-playing store because at that time I was as much of a sucker for nerd bait shit as everyone else was and still is. I have since moved beyond that, and the likelihood of me ever running Ninja Burger is pretty low. I do not condemn you if you do. I do not think less of you if you do. Simply, it's not really my kind of thing anymore. But John wanted me to make sure you all know I own Ninja Burger and the expansion Iron Ninja Burger Monkey.
Leave a comment under this video if you want Matt to run it as a one-shot this
I bet,
year.
like, someone like Pierre or or Johnny would probably run this good myself. I take myself way too seriously to run this kind of stuff, probably. But yeah, I've never run it. It's just it's a silly fun sort of thing, you know, silly fun stuff. It is actually interesting looking at this, because nowadays this would probably be a Kickstarter, wouldn't it? But it's interesting. It's like got more of like a zine, like fan create, like, you know, just created by you or me sort of thing.
Yeah.
But, don't know what the distribution on it was like. Be fascinating if I read up on it and it was like someone who's now, I don't know who did create it. Michael Fiegel and Kenshiro at. Sorry. I'm sure you're wonderful people. So, also back here we have, and first off we'll go for the originals. Dusty again. So, I imagine a bunch of you are familiar with fighting fantasy books, like choose your own adventure books from the 80s and 90s, and I imagine there's some kind of revival now for them even. Written by Steve Jackson, a different Steve Jackson. It's not the same Steve Jackson as Steve Jackson Games.
Oh.
I'm pretty sure I'm saying this Steve Jackson is the Steve Jackson who co-founded Games Workshop with Ian Livingstone, which is a different Steve Jackson to Steve Jackson Games.
Which one did Munchkin?
I'm pretty sure. The American Steve Jackson.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure about that. Someone's going to correct, like, that might have been a piece of misinformation I've been carrying in my head for years. Let me know in the comments, but I'm pretty sure there was a British Steve Jackson and an American Steve Jackson, and they are different people. I mean, you'd think they were different people if they were an American Steve Jackson.
From different places, yeah.
But anyway, many of you who've played the Fighting Fantasy game books may not know that there was a Fighting Fantasy, just like a role-playing system. And this is it. Yeah. And that's it. It's very, very simple. Very, very straightforward. Yeah. That's it. And this is an original thing of it, which is, I don't know if it's rare or potentially, I don't know. This is the Riddling Reaver, which is one of the only adventure things that was released for it, which is kind of fun. I once played this one-on-one with a friend in what we would call secondary school. Most people out there would call high school or middle school. Yeah, it's fun. That's it. That's Fighting Fantasy. Although, as a follow-on to that, there are these books which are advanced Fighting Fantasy. And remember when I said that Werewolf was the second role-playing game I ever got? This was the first. So, this is Dungeoneer, which is the Advanced Fighting Fantasy core book. As you can see, it's quite battered, but still in relatively good shape, still very readable and stuff. Yeah, again, very simplistic, like a little more complicated than Fighting Fantasy. Basically, it has skills rather than just 3 core stats. But yeah, it's good fun. We actually played some Advanced Fighting Fantasy back on our old channel. There was an old channel? If you look up ATCB Gaming on YouTube, it wasn't on Twitch, we just we have some very old role-playing content, which is mostly all audio, badly recorded audio. And yeah, we played Advanced Fighting Fantasy on that. It's aged a lot in that, like, it's one of these games where you're just chipping away at hit points. God, who play a game like that in 2021? But that's unfair. Advanced Fighting Fantasy is definitely more like, John's just shaking his head at me behind the camera now. But Advanced Fighting Fantasy is definitely more guilty of that than modern D&D is. So yeah, Dungeoneer. However, this was not the first role-playing book I bought, folks. The core book of Advanced Fighting Fantasy. The first one I bought was Black Sand, which was a follow-up expansion. But 11-year-old me did not understand this concept. It was fine. I still got the book and I was like, oh, I need another book to play. But I still loved it. Because so much of Black Sand is about rules for creating cities and stuff. And like the city of Black Sand itself, the setting of that, which is, I still think is a great fantasy city. Yeah, Black Sand. First one I ever bought in a random, it was like just like a bookstore. Yeah, I was about to say where it was, but we don't really talk about where we live and stuff. But yeah, which is no longer there, I don't think. Yeah, when I was 11, which was a very, very long time ago. There is a book called Alanzia, which is about like overland adventuring, a book called Out of the Pit, which is like a bestiary, and a book called Titan, which is about the world. And yeah, I got all these advanced fantasy books. Again, pretty old. I don't know how rare they are or how unusual it is to have them in a readable condition these days, but for what it's worth, I'm happy I have them. He's dumping them back there with no regard for them. So what else have we got? We have here a bunch of Forbidden Lands stuff and dice and cards and things. I was going to get out Forbidden Lands, but I actually won't because it's just a stack of stuff. And there's some more Forbidden Lands stuff here, so I can show you the aesthetic of it all by getting out those. So yeah, Forbidden Lands is a system from Free League. Regular viewers will know we like Free League stuff, and indeed all of that stuff is Free League. Forbidden Lands is their more traditional fantasy setting, I'd say. It's intended to be kind of a sandbox, and it has a kind of like hex crawling exploration aspect to it. It's very retro in like its art style and how it does stuff. It still uses the Year Zero engine, so it has that modern kind of quick, simple style. But in terms of like the art and how the books are, as you can see, it's like just a hardback book, which is lovely. Like, they look amazing. They're just so cool retroness. Yeah, I strongly recommend Forbidden Lands. He says, having never played it, but again, I really want to run it. I know that Justin, who many of you will know from various things on the channel, Justin's on Shadows of Estrin at the moment, has been on Vampire and Blades in the Dark, and anything else?
Alien,
yeah, the Alien one-shots. I know Justin has run a Forbidden Lands campaign, or possibly is still running it. And yeah, he likes it a lot, and so do his players, I don't doubt. Yeah, Forbidden Lands is really good. It's good that it's next to Mutant, because it's a very similar game to Mutant. The original Year Zero system, it's called Mutant Year Zero. It also has a kind of exploration aspect to it. We actually, back on ATCB Gaming, started recording a Mutant Year Zero campaign, and the first part of that never really saw the light of day. And it's possible we might go back and revisit it and re-edit those old videos and then continue recording new episodes. We're not sure about that yet, but I love Mutant Year Zero. I love the exploration aspect in like a post-apocalyptic world. You also have a base building sort of thing, your settlement you build up over time. It feels very kind of Fallout-y before Fallout did most of those things. Yeah, it's really good. It's really evocative, and at the same time you can interpret it how you want to make it kind of a grim and gritty thing, or almost a more cartoonish thing. It has multiple splat books, all of which are standalone, I think. So Mutant Year Zero is the normal one, you play like human mutants. Gen Lab Alpha is, and I'll start getting these out now as well. Gen Lab Alpha is where you play animal mutants, which is delightful. There are some illustrations in this that are just absolutely amazing. I'm going to try and find my favourite one, John. I mean, I like that one too, but and who doesn't like that? But they're so near the beginning. I think I will be let down if I don't show people this illustration in this. Oh, come on, please. No. Yes. Tortoise man. Come on. You can play a tortoise. Yeah, Gen Lab Alpha. And they're kind of like, they are the same world, but they're slightly different settings in that a lot of the splats have like default areas of the world they're set in, and once you complete the campaign in the book, it then like opens up and they get added into the main thing, which is sort of an interesting way to do it. As well as Gen Lab Alpha, there is Mechatron, which is for you to play robots and androids of all kinds. And then there's Elysium, which is basically also about unmutated humans who are still in like a vault, essentially. Again, very Fallout. Yeah. Then we have Tales from the Loop, which is the system that got me into Free League, because I'm a big fan of Simon Stalinhack and his art. And yeah, that's what this is, Tales from the Loop. If you haven't heard of it, yeah, role-playing in the 80s that never was. It's, yeah, kind of like that kind of 80s sci-fi sense. I'm trying to not say Stranger Things, but Stranger Things follows a very similar route. Or indeed, there is a Tales from the Loop television series, which I believe was made by Amazon, which you can watch, which is very good. But yeah, it's got that sensibility of like an 80s movie, and all the characters are kids investigating weird sci-fi or horrorness. Yeah, it's really good. I am actually baffled that we have not played this on the channel yet. And I'm sure we will, maybe at some point this year. Yes, there's Tales from the Loop. There's a follow-up, Things from the Flood, which is basically you play teenagers instead of kids. And it changes the rules just in a couple of ways. Like, for a start, your characters can die, which they can't in Tales from the Loop. But yeah,
Isn't
very similar thing there.
Isn't Things from the Flood also 90s rather than 80s?
Yeah, you're right. It's 90s, because you're meant to be essentially the same group. It's in the same place, just a few years on. Yeah.
Is there a post-Millennium one as well?
There is, but it hasn't been translated to a role-play. So
I'm
over
skipping
here,
ahead.
and I wasn't particularly going to talk about them, but these are just the Simon Stalinhack art books, and they're called Tales from the Loop and Things from the Flood. And then the third one is called The Electric State, which, yeah, is like, I think that's meant to be like late 90s, early 2000s, but they haven't so far made a role-playing game of that yet. I don't know if they will. Then we've got Coriolis, which we have run on the channel, again, a Year Zero system. All of these, like Forbidden Lands, Mutant, Tales from the Loop, and Coriolis, are Year Zero. We have a mini-series of this on the channel. I think it was like 86 episodes. Coriolis, The Third Horizon, is the glib way a lot of people talk about it, myself included, is it's Firefly only with Tales of Arabian Nights instead of Westerns. But that's also very true. That is what it is. It doesn't really have as much of a mechanical exploration and base building aspect like some of the others do, although Tales from the Loop doesn't either. But it's very, very good. It's a really interesting setting. I believe, like a couple of actually, I guess sort of most Free League systems, Coriolis existed before Free League acquired it. I think it was made possibly by some people who work at Free League, but I think it existed before the existence of Free League. In the same way Mutant did as well. Mutant was actually basically the Scandinavian D&D, in that it was a system that was very popular in Scandinavia in the 80s and 90s. And was made, written in Sweden, I think. Yeah, and then Mutant Year Zero is like one of the new versions of it. There are multiple different new editions of Mutant, but yeah, anyway. Vaesen is an original Free League game, and is also a Year Zero one. Nordic horror role-playing. Essentially a kind of folk horror Call of Cthulhu. I'm not sure how much the timeline of it is locked down, but I think it's meant to be late 1800s in Scandinavia. People on the Discord have talked about this game a lot. I would be very, very surprised if it didn't get an outing on the channel this year. I would also be very surprised if Johnny wasn't one to run it, because it is absolutely his thing. I think he's talked about running it, but he wants the Mythic Britain and Ireland sourcebook first to set it on these shores. But yeah, look at it. Gorgeous. Lovely, lovely. Lovely stuff. Yeah. Vaesen, looking forward to being involved in that in some capacity. Then we've got it's just a system called Symbaroum. Do you know what that is, John?
Never heard of it.
I don't know why I've got
Is it
it
like
here.
D&D?
I don't really know what. Symbaroum. Yeah, I mean, likelihood is if you're watching this, you're familiar with Symbaroum, because you probably watched our Symbaroum series, because for better or worse, it's now mainly what we're known for, I think. It's our flagship show. Symbaroum is a dark fantasy role-playing game. That's not entirely dissimilar from something like D&D in terms of mechanics. It just uses a slightly inverse thing and kind of focuses on different things. It is a world where magic is equivalent to corruption and decay. It has heavy themes of, like, as Chris very aptly put it, the main kind of culture in Symbaroum are both colonizers and refugees. And it just has all these heavy themes, this kind of sense of like the darkness of the wilderness and the forest of Symbaroum where you should not go or you will be killed 1,000 times over. Grim, gritty, dark fantasy, my kind of thing, broadly speaking. Also, the wonderful, wonderful, wonderful art of Martin Grip, which suffuses the whole thing, who also does a bunch of art for their other games. Like the Alien stuff is largely Martin Grip, I think.
He's also doing the upcoming One Ring.
Yes,
which
he is,
amazing.
Which I'm very excited about. Symbaroum. You probably know all about it. I have, I think, every Symbaroum thing released to date in PDF, if not in physical, but I have most of them in physical. Player's Guide, Games Master's Guide, Monster Codex. We've got the whole to date Throne of Thorns release stuff here, from Wrath of the Warden, which we're currently running, through to Haunted Waste, and there's going to be another 2 after that. Adventure Collection, and all that stuff. I love Symbaroum. As people are no doubt well aware, I'm really happy to have all this. It's really very, very, very good, and it's really a world that kind of unfolds the further you explore it with your players. Very good. Moving on, we'll just cover what's up here first, I think. So here we have, and it's not a game, but it's Your Best Game Ever by Monty Cook, which I kickstarted a while back, which is like sort of writing and essays on how to run good games, how to play in good games, how to blah, 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 blah. Honestly, I'm not sure I'd recommend this book. I haven't read a huge amount of it, and maybe it opens up a lot more the more I read it. But just on my initial scanning of it, there were a number of things about the Kickstarter I wasn't a fan of. It was one of those Kickstarters where this product, which was the name at the top of the Kickstarter, ended up taking a backseat to the extras they were producing, which I wasn't a fan of. But also this, like, a lot of this is phrased in a way like, this is how to do it good. And I'm like, well, that's one way. Or sometimes that doesn't work. And like, I don't know. From what the bits I've read of it, it felt a bit prescriptive in ways which should be more suggestive. But I haven't given it a proper chance. So maybe I will, and we'll report back to you. Then we've got Mork Borg. And I won't go into too much detail on this, because as I say, I'm going to do a kind of unpacking style video of it. But I recently backed the Kickstarter where you could just get everything released to date from Mork Borg by Stockholm Cartel anyway. But yeah, Mork Borg, it's wonderful. We did it as a one-shot. It is, as it says, a doom metal album of the game, a spiked flail to the face, rules light, heavy everything else. It's awesome, sort of splatter art punk design. Not for everyone, absolutely not for everyone. But I will refute, there are multiple people, particularly on Reddit, who have expressed the opinion it is unrunnable because they cannot pass the core book. Well, do I have a one-shot to recommend to you, because I can tell you it's very runnable and very enjoyable and just nasty and lovely. That's Mork Borg. I've got a bunch of other stuff. Like I say, I won't go too into them because we're going to have a video, but there's a couple of officially produced zines, Heretic and Ferratory, and some other stuff, like a Games Master Screen, and this lovely book called, a box rather, called Icon, which has these nasty sort of boss creatures lurking inside it. And also, off the back of that, there is actually the original edition of Mork Borg, essentially, which is called Dark Fort, which is a solo role-playing game. Mork Borg means Dark Fort in Swedish. Swedish? It must be Swedish. Or is it Norwegian? Stockholm Cartel, it must be Swedish.
I assume so.
It's probably Swedish. yeah, and as part of the Kickstarter, you got an original printing of Dark Falls, which is cool. What I also got by accident is the special Kickstarter edition of Mork Borg, which isn't what I ordered. And when I was like, I really want the other one because I really like the other cover, they said, cool, and just sent me that. And didn't ask me this one back. So you know what? At some point this year, later in 2022, we'll be doing a little giveaway for this. So keep your eyes and ears peeled for that. Oh my god, this has gone on so long already, John. So, further on the shelf, here we go. Here's something interesting. This is Star Wars The Role-Playing Game, the second edition from West End Games. So this is a very old edition of the Star Wars role-playing game. I don't think there is just the Star Wars role-playing game anymore. It's moved on to other things, which we'll also touch on. But yeah, this is a fun old role-playing game of Star Wars. There's not a lot more to say other than that. It looks very retro. It's kind of fun though. Like, I think for its time, it was relatively rules light. Relatively. I mean, you've got to take that with a pinch of salt for its time. But yeah, I ran this a little bit back in the 90s. It's fun. Star Wars. You know, back in the 90s, in the mid-90s, when Star Wars was fun. Come at me, internet. There's this source book, which is just called the Movie Trilogy Source Book, which is goofy as all hell, which is literally just every character and background character in the films has their background and stats. That's it. That's all this is. Love it. So, after that then, we've got a more modern Star Wars role-playing game, part of the Fantasy Flight Star Wars role-playing games. Are they still in print? I don't know.
I don't know what's been going on with Fantasy Flight recently.
Me neither. I haven't been able to play board games in the past couple of years too much, so I've kind of dialed out of the whole Fantasy Flight thing. Obviously, they lost the 40k license.
Yeah.
But I still think they have Star Wars because they have... I'm just looking at the board games now. The Legion they published not too long ago.
It wasn't even 40k, it was like all games. What? Because didn't they also lose the license for Fury or Dracula? Because that went out of print.
Yes, because that's also Games Workshop, you're right.
Yeah.
Star Wars Age of Rebellion was part of a trilogy of Star Wars games that Fantasy Flight did. Edge of Empire and Force and Destiny were the other two. I got Age of Rebellion because I thought the red thing looked pretty. And also everyone else got the other two. And I've got to be different. No, I like the idea of playing like members of the rebellion. Like, everyone else is like, oh, it's cool to be a bounty. And I was like, no, it's cool to fight an evil galaxy capitalist, fascist empire. Yeah, I just liked Age of Rebellion. As with most Fantasy Flight products, it is overblown and pretty and awkward and slightly clunky, but feels weirdly nice at the same time. Fantasy Flight role-playing games, yeah, a lot of them are really quite complex for modern games. Not so much the Star Wars ones, but still they have this density to them. And the products are obviously like these huge thick books that you look at and you're like, it doesn't need to be this big. But I do enjoy the Star Wars games. I think they have an interesting custom dice system, which doesn't quite work.
And it's also really expensive.
It is expensive. Everything Fantasy Flight is expensive, even for modern role-playing games, which are very expensive. I also have these 4 End of the World games from Fantasy Flight. They're all basically the same thing. They are quite short and quite simple games, to their credit, given it's Fantasy Flight, where basically the aim is you play yourself as a character alongside your friends at the end of the world. And there's 4 different ones: Zombie Apocalypse, Wrath of the Gods, Alien Invasion, and Revolt of the Machines. And each of them in turn have like 4 different scenarios that you can play through, and it's intended for either like a short thing or a long campaign. They are fun. They are really fun. The systems, like I say, really punchy. And they're written in a really cool way. You know, you got all these options, like what kind of zombie apocalypse do we want and stuff like that. Having said that, in the years since they're released, they're not that old. I think they're probably maybe 2015, 2016. In the years since they're released, the prospect of playing myself in the middle of a global apocalypse has become less alluring. So I don't know how much those get to the table. They also have the problem, you can play just fictional characters, but it has less like... The whole thing of it is that you're meant to play themselves. So if you play other characters, like, well, maybe there's other games that do this better. And obviously on Telling Tales, we can't really do that because then we're giving away loads of information about ourselves. Which I know many people out there might be like, why do you not want to do that? And all I'd say is, just keep paying attention to the internet. And you will realise why we do not do that.
It's also got a really fun, I say fun, potentially friendship ending mechanic where when you write your character sheet, basically you write your stats as you propose them, and then your friends vote on them. Yeah. Whether they should be higher or lower.
Yeah, which is fun. Also, I would just like to flag anyone who's watched the Alien one-shots, or anything where I've run games with Justin, probably, will be aware that Justin frequently mentions that I kill his characters off often. 2 of those separate deaths have been in End of the World games, in Zombie Apocalypse and Wrath of the Gods. Although I would caveat that within Wrath of the Gods, his character didn't die; they just became a deep one. And in Zombie Apocalypse, he tried to give mouth to mouth to me when I was an infected zombie. So, is it really my responsibility? That's all I'm saying. Should I be blamed for this? I don't know. You tell me. Write in the comments. Then we get to a couple of the 40k Fantasy Flight Systems, and when I talk about the clunkiness of Fantasy Flight Systems, oh boy, these are the ones. So they're gorgeous books. They're wonderful and in-depth and very lovely. Now, and they're definitely not unplayable because I've played them. We had members of our regular offline role-playing group who... We ran this for a while, and they basically said, I don't want to be in this again. It's not a role-playing game. It's a skirmish war game. They're not entirely wrong. It's very clunky. Not clunky, it's crunchy. To the point where one of us designed a pivot table spreadsheet to handle part of the damage calculations. So, make of that what you will. I have Death Watch, which is the Space Marine one, and Only War, which is the Imperial Guard one. There are a couple of others as well. They're all out of print now because, Fantasy Flight lost the 40k license. So, yeah, I guess difficult to get hold of. They're also very expensive because Fantasy Flight. But yeah, they're decent enough. Here we have something we played as part of a one-shot last year that no one watched, called Fiasco. Go watch it, it's good. Fiasco is a GM-less system that had quite a bit of a rep in the early 2000s, but seems to have fallen off the radar a bit now, which is why you have all these quotes from like Will Wheaton and Felicia Day all over it, because you can't get more early 2010s than role-playing games recommended by Will Wheaton and Felicia Day. It's like a Coen Brothers style, slightly randomly generated farce, essentially, or fiasco, if you will. And like I say, it's GM-less. It has structure to it where you have like 2 acts and you like tilt halfway through and all this interesting stuff. It's really, really good. I've played Fiasco, I think, 3 or 4 times now, and at least 2 of them have been some of the best role-playing experiences of my life. Particularly the first time we played it, which was absolutely superb. Were you in that one, John?
No, I was away on that one, but I've had it oft recounted to me.
Yeah, it was really good. To this day, I cannot hear the name Bradley without needing it to be said in a certain way. Hissed desperately through the little window in a confessional booth. We have playset anthologies of that as well. So Fiasco is based on playsets, so like it's like a setting or a time or whatever, and the way you randomly generate relationships and important things like locations and characters and items is via the playsets. So it's just to add more ways to play it, essentially. Next we have Yellow King. I'm going to have to get this off the shelf, aren't I? Even though it's going to collapse everything here because it's so thick. Okay, Yellow King, behave, thank you, is from Pelgrane Press, who are the same people who do Gumshoe and a number of other games. This was a Kickstarter, and it's a lovely set of, again, hardback. You may be grasping, I like hardback things. Lovely set of hardbacks like that. I don't want to get too into what Yellow King is, because I want to run a campaign of it at some point, and I think going into it blind is probably an amazing experience for players. So I won't get into it too much. All I will say is it's this lovely set here. This is also the Games Master screen, which comes apart via magnets.
How does that work?
I don't know. No one knows how magnets work, John. What do they do? Yeah. And it's like a sequential series of 4 settings through time and space. And as you can imagine, a great deal of it is based on a kind of Lovecraftian mythos. Not that Yellow King is Lovecraft, but it's Robert Chambers. But it's Robert Chambers, right?
Yes.
Yeah. It's really, really good. Rules-wise, it's based on the Gumshoe system. And I really, really want to run it. Maybe on the channel, we'll see. I don't think it... if I ran it, I'd want it to be a full-on campaign. I don't know if I can manage that on the channel, but we'll see.
If we did it on the channel, it would probably be like recorded episodes,
Maybe.
like pre-recorded.
Maybe. We'd see. I want to move this stuff. Put it there. Then we have Call of Cthulhu. Probably haven't heard of this one. It's a bit obscure. 5th edition. Because that's when I got it. In the mid-90s. Yeah, not a lot to say about Call of Cthulhu. Good old Call of Cthulhu. Hasn't really changed much over the years. This edition is much the same as the edition that Johnny runs from. Yeah, it's good. It's great. It stood up. Classic cosmic horror role-playing game. I've also got the complete masks of... now, this is the test of how everyone pronounces it. Nyarlathotep. Nyarlathotep. Don't you pronounce it different to me?
I think I say Nyarlathotep.
Okay. Yeah, which is a classic long-form campaign. I own it. I've never been massively tempted to run it because Call of Cthulhu doesn't massively lend itself to long-term campaigns for me, because it's like, well, the characters are probably going to go mad or die, or I don't know. And it's just a bit kind of like too... Stuff like Massive Nyarlathotep reminds me of the Fantasy Flight incarnation of the Cthulhu mythos, in that it's a bit noir and it's a bit fighting Cthulhu with shotguns, and it's like that's not what interests me. And like a long campaign by necessity kind of has to be that, and Massive Nyarlathotep is a bit like that because you're fighting all these cultists and stuff, and it's like I don't know, maybe one day. We have Song of Ice and Fire role-playing. That's that game off that telly show. No, obviously it is based off the books rather than the TV show of Game of Thrones. It is from Green Ronin. Yes, Green Ronin. It's really interesting and it's really pretty. I actually really, really like that cover. It's some of my favourite Song of Ice and Fire art ever. It's really good. Battle of the Trident. Yeah. Yeah. We know.
Does it predate the TV series? Or
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think so. And it's nice. It's a nicely laid out little book. It's quite a crunchy system for a modern system, but it has lots of lovely stuff about like generating your own house. It's got rules for political intrigue and stuff. Yeah, it's actually a really nice little system. Maybe I'll do a bit of that on the channel one day. But again, it doesn't really lend itself to a one-shot because there's a whole bunch of prep stuff you have to do before you start that makes it feel kind of like a waste if you then just do a 3-hour session and nothing else. But hey, I don't know. I have run it a little bit. I ran this actually. Here's a personal detail you can have. When I moved to the city I now live in about 10 years ago, I needed to make some role-playing friends. So I answered an ad in my local friendly game store to go to a role-playing night at a room above a pub in the middle of the town. And that is where I met a bunch of the people who are even now who are members of ATCB Gaming and are now members of Telling Tales. And then through them, I met the other members of Telling Tales. So that's how we all met. And one of the first games I ran at that old role-playing night above the pub was Song of Ice and Fire. There you go. There's a story of interest to know. So, moving on, we've got Deadlands. This is, I think, the first edition of Deadlands. Deadlands is the Weird West role-playing game, so it's spookiness in the Old West. It's good. It's pioneered it was a very popular game in the late 90s for the fact that it used cards instead of dice. And yeah, a number of other games have kind of taken that on since. Yeah, it's really good. It's really fun. It might still use dice, actually. It does still use dice. But it also uses cards and like poker chips and stuff. Yeah, we played it a few years ago, didn't we? Mm-hmm. And it's sort of held up, actually. I think there's some newer editions of it, but and other things that may end up on the channel at some point. Then, oh my word, I had no idea this would take this long, John. I'm sorry. Are you holding up there?
Just about. Apologies to any slight shaky cam to the audience, but
yeah. Dragon Age. I just got this because I like Dragon Age, the game. It's by Green Ronin again. I was going to say it's by BioWare, which is on the back. But yeah, I like Dragon Age, and I think the art in this edition is mostly pretty good. You may see it looks pretty similar to a Song of Ice and Fire layout because it's by the same people, which occurs to me maybe it should be next to them on the shelf. But yeah, I like Dragon Age. I like that setting. It's simpler than a Song of Ice and Fire, I believe. I've never run it. Want to. Maybe when the new Dragon Age comes out, there'll be impetus and people will be up for it. So we'll see. Moving on from that to something else I'd like to run a bit more desperately. This is Amber. If you know what this is, I love you. Amber is based on a series of books by Roger Zelazny, a now departed sci-fi and fantasy author, called the Amber Chronicles, aren't they? Or sometimes they're just referred to as Nine Princes in Amber, which is the title of the first book.
Yeah, I think there's different names for the 10 and the first 5.
Yeah.
But I can't remember what the difference is.
Maybe. Either way, Amber, first off, go read the first series of Amber books by Roger Zelazny.
They're really good.
There's 5 of them, but they're not that long. I'd say almost together, they're almost the length of a modern long fantasy book, but they're really, really, really good.
If you want to read the prototype of both George R. R. Martin and Neil Gaiman, read the Amber books.
Yeah, Roger Zelazny's super influential. They're really good and they're really fun and they hold up. Amber. So the conceit of Amber is there's one core reality, and that core reality is ruled by a family of not quite godlike beings, but they're certainly more powerful beings than any other beings, essentially. They spend their time in internecine squabbling and slap fights, and and it's basically about them and their interactions with the world of Shadow, which is that there are infinite number of realities stretching out from Amber, which are all reflections of it, including our world. And you can go travel through Shadow and find anything, any possibility. And the ruling family of Amber has the ability to do this. And I'll just leave it there. I'll just say that. But they're really good. And this is a role-playing game. It is diceless. It has 4 stats, all from, I think they run from -50 to 100. And 0 is human, I think. Or maybe -50 is human. I can't remember. But it's great. It's really, really good. I'd show you through it, but it'll mean also a lot of the art is pretty bad. But unless it's one of those systems where I'd love to run this, it'll be really good. But there's literally no point running it with people who have not read Amber, because Amber is such a specific setting that it's what would be the point? I'd love to run it for the channel. We'll see. I have no doubt no one would watch it, and I'd really struggle to scrape together players for it. But for what it's worth, that was great. We have, I'm not sure what edition this is, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. I'm also not entirely sure why it's got a fancy cover on it. It might even be first edition. I think it's definitely the edition. Yep, it's first edition, 86. It's definitely the edition I read when I was about 12. But I got this not that long ago, well, maybe about 10 years ago now, from a friend who was selling their role-playing stuff. Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. This is before maybe Warhammer Fantasy is as congealed as it is now in terms of setting. Like you've got sea elves and stuff, which are not a thing in modern Warhammer. But yeah, this is the original thing, and everything's based on careers instead of classes, which was quite revolutionary at the time. Do you want to play a rat catcher? You can play a rat catcher. That's all I'm saying. If that's a thing you want to do. Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. It's Warhammer and fantasy in roleplay form. Then we have Pendragon. I can't get over how long this end section is taking. Then we have Pendragon, which is an Arthurian role-playing game from Chaosium, the fine folks who bring you Call of Cthulhu. This is quite an old edition, like mid-90s or so. Pendragon's kind of crunchy and is a very like late 80s type role-playing game in that it just has lots and lots of tables for stuff. And you basically play a Knight of the Round Table, and then you go on and play the heirs of that Knight of the Round Table, because like it's sort of a thing where I think every session is a year in the life of the knights, so they're meant to be like very contained session stories, and as it goes on, maybe your knight dies or maybe they retire or whatever, and then the mantle is taken over by their child. If you're into Arthurian stuff, it's kind of fun. It's not meant to be like accurate Arthurian. It's meant to be more kind of once and future king. So you have like plate armor and stuff like that, which obviously is completely wrong. But yeah, still fun. Slay Industries, which I believe has had a new edition quite recently, which is not something I expect because I kind of consider it a bit obscure. But maybe not. Again, early to mid-90s from Nightfall Games. It is a sort of nearish, futurish cyberpunk with further sci-fi elements. Sort of the entire planet has become one city called Mort, I think. And you play operatives of Slay Industries who are like guns for hire, going out and doing violent things. It is very, very, very 2000 AD. If anyone out there has read 2000 AD, I'm sure some of you have, to the point where some of the same illustrators, I cannot remember this guy's name for the life of me, but he definitely did 2000 AD art. It's super good. Super good. The setting, I can't say how well the system holds up, because I haven't played it in a long, long time. But yeah, it's fun. Maybe a candidate for something we do. Next we have Cult. Cult, Death is Only the Beginning. Ooh, edgy. Cult is what people played in the 90s if World of Darkness was a bit fluffy for them. It's dark and edgelordy. It's got a bit more of an element of like conspiraciness and kind of X-Files-ness to it, I guess. But also like it's intentionally, edgy and encourages characters to be kind of monstrous in a different way to World of Darkness. I believe there's something in the game to do with like how you escalate in power is to do with like your kind of karma level, and you basically only really gain more power if you become really pure or really evil, and it's really difficult to become really pure. So yeah, I've never played Cult. I got it secondhand because I was like, oh my god, Cult. So I don't know if I'd ever play it. Might be a bit too much. This may be a controversial one to have on my roleplay shelf, but I'll tell you why. Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader, the original version of Warhammer 40k. it isn't entirely a role-playing game. It's a skirmish battle game, like not a full war game like it is now. But there are definitely role-playing elements to it. So I keep it on my role-playing shelf. That's basically it. There we go. Pretty good condition for something released in 87. Yeah, that's that. We then have something called Millennium's End, which I won't talk about too much because I don't know much about it. I was randomly given this at high school by a friend who didn't want it anymore. It's made by Chameleon Eclectic, and it's like a techno thriller thing, which I guess was more of a thing in the 90s than it is now. Yeah, I don't know much about it. All I know is that there's like a GM screen. Look at that, pretty bad art. It's like a GM screen that has like, I think, a clear plastic. Was it? Oh, it's not clear plastic, but it has like body locations to get shot on. It's that kind of 90s crunch. 80s, 90s crunch. I don't know much about Millennium's End, so sorry if someone watching this went, Millennium's End, that's my favourite game, I want to know his opinions on it. I don't have any opinions on it. We have One Ring here, which we've run a one-shot of on the channel. The kind of latest Lord of the Rings based role-playing game. This is the original edition from Cubicle 7. It's a very good game, very, very good game. The layout of these rules is like someone wanted to drive people to madness. It is god-awful. I believe there was a second edition that helped a lot. But those are my main two things to take away from this version of One Ring. It's really good. The rules are really evocative. It really flows. It's really nice. But learning it is an absolute nightmare. It comes with fancy special dice. Look at that. A lovely tray. There we go. Yeah. That's One Ring. Yeah, the license is now with Free League, and I am looking forward greatly to the new edition, which is the one we ran on the channel. Yeah, which mostly keeps the really good rules, streamlines them in places, and is laid out in a way in which you can follow and understand the book. Next, we've got Hillfolk, which is one of those indie role-playing games that the kids are talking about these days. Also from Pelgrane Press, who made Yellow King. This is a diceless role-playing game with lots and lots and lots of different settings that are possible, or it has a default one of kind of Bronze Age hill tribes. It's really, really good. It's heavily improvisational, although it does have a kind of games master role. Subsequent scenes are based on people basically pitching ideas about relationships between characters and the kind of drama they want to see, and then you play through those. It has like a sort of chip system where you earn things to kind of make changes to scenes and stuff like that. It's really, really good. I've only run it once, but it was a really good experience. So hopefully we'll get to play that again, maybe play that on the channel. Hillfolk is really good. Next up, and we only have two things left. There's two things left. You're going to make it, John. You're going to make it.
You're going to have to pry this camera out of my frozen hands when we're done.
Cyberpunk 2020. Timely to have this because Sam is going to be running this on the channel in like 5 days' time. Yeah, it's the classic Cyberpunk game from Mike Pondsmith. Published by R. Talzorian Games, which is his label, his company. Yeah, obviously, elements of it have aged. Not least of all, the name. Because, 2020 was a long time ago now, or feels like. So, yeah, but it's still the world. It holds up, obviously, like it was adapted into Cyberpunk 2077 quite recently, which, yeah, was controversial. But the setting it came over really well, and I thought, in the game.
There's also Cyberpunk Red. Is that an updated 2020 or is that 2077?
Yes, yeah, I think it's set in 2077.
Right.
But that is the new version of the game. Yes, Cyberpunk Red. There's been other versions in between. There was one in the late 90s called something whose name I've forgotten. But you specifically played like teens in the cyberpunk world, and it was a bit more like your kids, and it was quite influenced by anime, I think, and stuff like that. Because I know Mike Pondsmith's like a big anime guy. Yeah, Cyberpunk 2020. Check it out in a few days on the channel. And then finally, John, lastly of all, but definitely not leastly, that's how the saying goes, Trigger from Wilsonian Arts Council. Lovely indie game, surreal, abstract, fun-ish. Not fun-ish, but just ish in general. I believe the pitch of this was, what if D&D had been based on anarchic, surreal British 70s fantasy rather than Lord of the Rings. And that's what it is. It's just odd and weird and lovely and pretty and beautiful. And we've already run it on the channel in a one-shot, which you can go check out from fairly early last year. And it's good that we're done because someone is arriving to visit. Shall we finish on some exclusive footage of the cat? There we go. There we go. What do you think of the role-playing collection, sir? Well, that was predictable. So, yeah, that's my collection. I hope that was enjoyable. My voice is starting to go slightly, and John's arms are going to fall off. So thank you for watching this. If you want to see kind of more stuff like this, like obviously wouldn't just do it again because you've seen it all, then let us know. But yeah, that's my tabletop role-playing game collection. Thank you for watching. And check out the rest of the stuff on the channel. You got any final words, John?
Ow.
That'll do.